For months, I lied to my sick wife every single day. Every evening, I kissed Emily goodbye, told her I was working late, and drove across town to see another woman. And the worst part was not the lying. The worst part was that I had almost convinced myself it was not betrayal, because my wife had already started forgetting who I was. But the woman pulling me away from my marriage was not my mistress. She was the person everyone believed was saving us. And by the time I realized the truth, I had almost destroyed the last promise I ever made to the love of my life. Before Alzheimer's entered our lives, Emily was not just my wife, she was my safest place. We had been together for almost 15 years, and somehow she had turned ordinary life into something beautiful. Every morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Emily always made mine stronger than hers. Whenever I complained, she laughed. You need caffeine before you become a decent human being. And every single morning, I pretended to be offended. On rainy days, we stood by the kitchen window together. She rested her head on my shoulder, while we watched cars pass through the grey streets. One morning she smiled and said, "One day, we should move somewhere quiet." I smiled. In-house, with a garden. Her eyes lit up. With roses and maybe a dog, a badly behaved dog. She added, "The kind that destroys shoes." I laughed. "Sounds expensive." She kissed my cheek. "Sounds perfect at night." We argued over movies. Emily loved romantic comedies. I always claimed I wanted action movies. But somehow, we always ended up watching the same old shows half the time. She fell asleep before the opening credits finished, and I would sit there listening to her soft breathing, wondering how I got lucky enough to spend my life beside her. She stole fries from my plate. She sang terribly. While cleaning the kitchen, she left little notes around the house. "Good luck today. Do not forget milk. I love you, even when you snore." Those notes stayed on the refrigerator for years, and somehow, every single one made me smile. When my business nearly failed, I came home one night expecting bad news. Instead, I found Emily sitting at the kitchen table with bills spread everywhere. I thought she had been crying, but she pushed a cup of coffee toward me and smiled. "We will survive this together, not you, we." When her father died, I held her in the hallway outside the funeral home, while she cried so hard she nearly collapsed. And when I finally got promoted after years of struggling, Emily celebrated like we had won the lottery. She bought a cheap chocolate cake from the grocery store, stuck one candle in the middle, turned off the lights, and made me blow it out while singing terribly off-key. That was Emily. She made ordinary moments unforgettable. We argued. We annoyed each other. Sometimes we slammed doors, but we always came back together, because there had never been a single day when I questioned where I belonged. Emily was my wife, my best friend, my home, my whole world. Or at least, she used to be. The first signs were so small I almost missed them. Emily forgot where she put her keys, then her phone, then the laundry inside the washing machine. At first, we laughed about it. Everyone forgets things, right? One morning, I walked into the kitchen and found 2 cups of coffee sitting on the counter. Emily stared at them with a strange expression. I smiled. "You already made mine." She looked confused, then forced a laugh. I guess I forgot, but something in her eyes scared me. Weeks later, she asked me the same question 4 times in one afternoon. "What time is your meeting?" Each time I answered, and each time she nodded, as though it was the first time she had asked. I told myself she was stressed. People forget things. People get tired. People have bad days. But then one evening, I walked into a kitchen filled with smoke. Emily sat in the living room watching television, completely unaware that she had left the stove on. I rushed to turn off the burner and opened every window. When she saw the fear on my face, her expression changed, and for the first time, I saw fear in hers. "I do not know what is happening to me," she whispered. That night, I held her while she cried, and I promised her everything would be okay. But deep down, I had already started feeling afraid. Then came our anniversary. I came home with flowers. I had dinner reservations, a gift hidden in my jacket pocket. But when I walked into the bedroom, Emily was folding laundry. I smiled and held out the bouquet. She stared at the flowers. "They are beautiful. What are they for?" I waited for her to laugh. She did not. The smile slowly disappeared from my face. "Emily," she looked confused. "What?" I swallowed. "Today is our anniversary." Her hands froze. For several seconds, she just stared at me. Then tears filled her eyes. "I forgot." I nodded, and she slowly sat down on the edge of the bed. "Oh God." Her voice broke. I forgot us. I sat beside her and wrapped my arms around her. She buried her face against my chest and sobbed, and for the first time in 15 years, I realized I could not protect her from whatever was happening. A month later, my phone rang while I was at work. An unfamiliar voice spoke. "Sir, are you related to an Emily Parker?" My blood turned cold. 30 minutes later, I found my wife sitting alone in her car outside a pharmacy across town. She was gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "I knew I had a home," she sobbed. "I just could not remember where it was." I held her in the parking lot while she cried, and inside me, something broke. Then came the doctors, the specialists, the tests. Weeks of hope, weeks of denial, weeks of praying they had made a mistake. Maybe stress, maybe exhaustion, maybe vitamins. Anything except what we feared. Then one afternoon, we sat inside a quiet white office while the doctor spoke softly, too softly, and before he even said the words, I knew. Early onset Alzheimer's room went silent. The world stopped. I remember staring at the floor while the doctor continued talking, but I could not hear him anymore, because all I could think was, not Emily, not my Emily, not the woman who dreamed about roses and badly behaved dogs, not the woman who laughed at terrible movies, not the woman who had spent 15 years building a life beside me, anyone but her. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. 10 minutes passed. Then Emily finally turned toward me. "I am not afraid of dying," her voice trembled. I looked over. Tears filled her eyes. "I am afraid of forgetting you." I felt my throat close. "What if one day I look at you and feel nothing?" I pulled the car to the side of the road. Then I took her face in my hands, and through tears, I whispered, "Then I will remember for both of us at that moment." I truly believed love could defeat anything. I had no idea that one day, the woman I loved would look directly into my eyes and ask me who I was, before Alzheimer's stole pieces of her memory. I believed love could survive anything, and for a while, I honestly thought I was right. After the diagnosis, I threw myself into being the husband Emily deserved. I labeled kitchen drawers. I taped reminders to the refrigerator. I wrote names underneath photographs. Our wedding picture, our trip to the lake, her parents, old friends, and underneath my picture, I wrote, "Daniel, your husband." Emily laughed the first time she saw it. "Very official," I smiled. "Just in case you forget how lucky you are." She rolled her eyes. And for a little while, those jokes saved us. Some mornings, she woke up smiling. She made coffee, teased me about my shirts, talked about old vacations. On those days, I almost believed the doctors had been wrong. But then the bad days came. Days when she asked where her father was even though he had been gone for years. Days when she packed a suitcase because she thought she had to get back to college. Days when she stood in her own hallway and whispered, "Do I live here?" And every question took something from me. But I kept smiling, because whenever I cried in front of her, she became afraid. So I learned to cry alone. In bathrooms, inside parked cars, in the laundry room while the dryer was running. Anywhere she could not hear me. Then came the night that broke me. Emily was standing in the living room, staring at our wedding picture above the fireplace, one of my favorite photographs. She was laughing in her white dress, and I stood beside her holding her hand like I had just been handed the entire world. I walked up behind her. "That was a good day," she did not answer. Then she turned toward me and asked, "Who is that man standing beside me?" I laughed, not because it was funny, because my mind refused to understand what I had just heard. Then I saw her face. She was serious, terrified. She truly did not know. I pointed at the picture. "That is me." She looked from the photograph to my face and slowly shook her head. No, my heart stopped. "It is me." She stepped backward. "Please do not lie to me." And suddenly, the woman I had loved for 15 years looked at me like I was a stranger. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat alone beneath the wedding picture. The house was dark, silent, and for the first time, I understood something terrifying. I was losing my wife, while she was still alive. Eventually, I could not leave her alone anymore. I changed my work schedule, installed locks on the doors, hired daytime help, learned never to argue when she remembered things wrong. Because sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step into someone else's reality instead of forcing them back into yours. But love did not make me strong. It made me tired. There were nights when Emily screamed because she thought I was an intruder. Mornings when she cried because she forgot how to button her blouse. Afternoons when she held my hand and called me by her brother's name. And every time, I answered anyway, because she was still Emily, even when pieces of her disappeared. Then one night, I woke up at 3 in the morning, and her side of the bed was empty. The front door stood open. I ran barefoot into the cold street, calling her name. Terrified, I found her 2 blocks away, under a streetlight, still wearing her nightgown. Her feet were bleeding. She was shaking. When I reached her, she backed away. Tears streamed down her face. I want to go home. I wrapped my coat around her shoulders. You are going home, Em. She looked into my eyes and whispered, do I know you? I carried her all the way back to the house. But something inside me had finally broken. Love alone could not keep her safe anymore. The memory care center was beautiful, bright, peaceful, too peaceful. The kind of place where everyone smiled softly because sadness lived in every room. On her first day, Emily squeezed my hand tightly, like a little girl afraid of school. Promised her I would visit every day. Promised this was not goodbye. Then one of the nurses guided her to water room. Halfway down the hallway, Emily turned back. For one beautiful second, recognition returned. Daniel, I almost cried. Then the moment disappeared. Confusion returned to her eyes, and she asked, are you coming too? I forced myself to smile. Every day that was where I met Sarah. At first, she felt like an answer to my prayers. She had gentle eyes, a calm voice, and somehow, she knew exactly how to calm Emily when fear took over. One afternoon, I arrived to find Emily crying in the garden. Did not know where she was. She did not understand why she could not go home. Sarah knelt beside her and held both her hands. You are safe. Daniel is coming. He always comes, Emily relaxed. Daniel, Sarah smiled. Your husband. And for the first time in days, Emily stopped crying. I stood there near the doorway, watching, grateful, completely unaware that the woman helping my wife remember me would eventually become the woman helping me forget myself. Over the next few months, Sarah became part of my routine. She knew Emily loved vanilla ice cream. She knew rainy days made her anxious. She knew old songs calmed her down. And whenever I visited, she gave me updates. Sometimes Emily painted, sometimes they sat in the garden. Sometimes Emily talked about a little house with roses. And every time Sarah mentioned it, my chest tightened, because that dream belonged to Emily and me, not to Alzheimer's, and not to anyone else. Eventually, Sarah and I started talking after visiting hours. At first, it was harmless. Coffee, conversations, stories about Emily. For months, doctors had spoken about my wife like she was a patient, but Sarah remembered she was a person, and somehow, that mattered. One evening she handed me coffee and asked, when was the last time you slept? I laughed. I honestly do not remember. She looked concerned. You need someone to take care of you. To no one had said those words to me in years. Then the texts started. Did you eat? How are you holding up? Get some sleep. How is Emily tonight? Simple messages, nothing inappropriate, but slowly, without realizing it, I started waiting for them, and that realization terrified me. One night, after reading one of Sarah's messages, I opened our wedding album instead. I sat on the living room floor for almost an hour, page after page. Emily laughing, Emily dancing, Emily feeding me cake, Emily making silly faces because she hated photographs. And while holding that album, I stared at Sarah's text message on my phone, then turned the screen face down, because for the first time, I felt ashamed. Some nights, I sat in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside. Sometimes, I deleted Sarah's messages before opening the front door, not because they were wrong, not yet, but because guilt had already moved into my heart. Once, one actually removed my wedding ring and sat there holding it, turning it between my fingers, wondering if taking it off would somehow make life easier. But after a few seconds, I slipped it back on, because no matter how confused Emily became, she was still my wife. Then, one afternoon, I arrived early. Emily was asleep in the garden room. An old movie played softly on television. For one beautiful second, she looked exactly like the woman I remembered. I covered her with a blanket. As I turned to leave, she opened her eyes, smiled softly, and asked, "Are you my husband?" My heart stopped. Yes, she smiled. Good. Then she closed her eyes again and drifted back to sleep. I stood there for several minutes, unable to move. because somehow, even after forgetting almost everything, part of her still knew I belonged beside her. But loneliness is dangerous. It does not arrive all at once. It arrives quietly. One conversation, one cup of coffee, one text message, one dinner, until one day, you wake up and realize someone else's voice has become part of your life. And by then, it is already too late, and I had no idea that the woman I believed understood my pain was about to reveal something that would make me question everything. Weeks passed, and no matter how guilty I felt, I kept seeing Sarah, not because I planned to, not because I wanted to replace Emily, but because loneliness has a way of disguising itself as comfort, and comfort can become dangerous. One evening, Sarah invited me to dinner. Afterward, rain tapped softly against the windows of her apartment while we sat in silence. Then she looked at me. "You look exhausted," I smiled weakly. "I am." She studied me for a moment. "You cannot keep punishing yourself forever." I looked down. "Emily is still my wife." Sarah nodded. I know. Then she reached for my hand. This time, I did not pull away, and somehow, that frightened me more than anything. Later that night, I sat in my driveway for nearly 20 minutes. The lights inside the house were off, and through the front window, I could see our wedding photograph hanging above the stairs. Suddenly, I imagined Emily healthy again. I imagined confessing everything, imagined the hurt in her eyes, and I knew something terrible. The woman who had loved me through 15 years deserved better than the man I was becoming. But even after realizing that, I still went back, because loneliness does not disappear the moment you recognize it. Over time, Sarah became bolder. One evening she quietly said, "You deserve someone who can love you back." I froze. "Emily loves me." Sarah smiled sadly. "She loved you." The words felt like a slap. "Do not say that, Daniel. She does not know your name. She barely remembers herself. How long are you going to keep suffering?" Tears filled my eyes. "She is still here." Sarah squeezed my hand. But for how long? And what terrified me most was that part of me had already asked myself the same question. Then came the day everything changed. I arrived at the center earlier than usual. As I walked toward the nurse's station, I heard Sarah's voice, and another nurse. I was about to announce myself when I heard Sarah laugh softly. "Honestly, I do not know why he keeps torturing himself." The other nurse frowned. "What do you mean? Daniel, his wife, does not even know who he is anymore. She cannot love him back. She cannot even remember his name." The nurse crossed her arms. "She is still his wife." Sarah sighed. "I know, but sometimes I think he is holding on to a ghost." My blood turned cold. The other nurse remained silent. Then Sarah added quietly, "He deserves someone who is actually here." I stood frozen, not because Sarah wanted me, not because she thought she loved me, but because I suddenly understood something. To Sarah, Emily was already gone. She had stopped seeing my wife as a person. She had become an obstacle, something to move beyond. But to me, Emily was the woman who stayed awake beside me when my business nearly collapsed. The woman who buried her father and still worried about my feelings. The woman who celebrated my promotion with a cheap chocolate cake and one candle. The woman who dreamed about roses and a badly behaved dog. Alzheimer's had stolen her memories, but it had not stolen her humanity. And worst of all, I had almost started believing otherwise. That evening, I went to Sarah's apartment one last time. She smiled when she opened the door, but her smile disappeared when she saw my face. What happened? I took a deep breath. This has to end. Her expression changed. "What? I cannot do this anymore." "Daniel." No, tears filled my eyes. "I love my wife." Sarah looked devastated. "Your wife does not even know who you are." I nodded. "I know. She may never remember me again. She may never say my name. She may never recognize my face. But for 15 years she chose me, and I refused to let her disease erase the life we built." Sarah shook her head. "You are throwing away your chance to be happy." A sad smile crossed my face. "No, I am throwing away my excuse, because that was the truth." I had blamed grief. I had blamed loneliness. I had blamed Alzheimer's. But in reality, I had been running from pain, and Sarah had given me somewhere to hide. But hiding was never the same thing as healing. I walked away, and I never saw her again. A few weeks later, Emily had one of her good days, the kind that had become painfully rare. We sat together in the garden, outside the center. The sun was beginning to set. Birds sang softly, and for the first time in months, I saw her smile. Not the frightened smile, not the confused smile. Her smile, the smile I had fallen in love with 15 years earlier. She reached for my hand, then looked into my eyes, really looked at me, and softly whispered, "You look familiar." I laughed through tears. "I hope so," she smiled. Then after a long silence, she said something that nearly stopped my heart. "I think you loved me very much." My vision blurred. I nodded, unable to speak. She squeezed my hand and smiled. "Whoever you are, thank you for staying." Those were the last words she ever spoke to me that made sense, and somehow they healed something inside me, because I finally understood something. Love is not always about being remembered. Sometimes love is simply choosing to stay, even when the person you love can no longer remember why. Emily passed away. 7 months later, people often asked if I regretted staying. Some asked if I had wasted years of my life, and I always gave the same answer: no, because love is not a transaction, it is not a contract, and it does not end the moment life becomes unfair. Even now, every Sunday morning, I still make 2 cups of coffee, one for me and one for Emily. Sometimes I sit beside the rose bushes we planted together years ago, and I talk to her about Charlie, about the neighbors, about life. And sometimes, when the wind moves through the roses, I can almost hear her voice again, complaining that I made the coffee too weak. And for a moment, I smile, because after 15 years together, some habits become another name for love, and maybe that is what forever really means. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if you were Daniel? Would you have stayed with Emily or moved on? Share your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe for more emotional stories, love and lies, because every heart has a secret.